So actually, in our studies, anchored about the principles of management. I talk about the areas of management in a general term and sometimes in specific way, comparing management and leadership. And tonight, I'm going to just focus on these four so that it will add in your understanding uh, about these four expression of management or the foundation of management, which is planning, leading, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Now, I'll be basing on my lecture tonight from my dissertation because this is my dissertation, okay? And this is the heart of what I wrote about my suggestion to pastors or even workers in a setting that is related to community development. So I'll be sharing this one to you in order to enlighten you what it means really uh, uh, in applying these four principles of expression of leadership to your own context, your own ministry, or in your own teaching ministry, whatever ministry has God uh, allowed you to work with Him. So, number one, planning. Um, in my understanding of planning, it's defined by Stoner and Freeman, who wrote a book about this. And he defined that planning is a process of establishing goals, and we have talked about goals, and suitable course of action for achieving those goals. And I explained that one in planning in a simple term. Okay, you want something, then you have to plan. You have to set goals. So it implies that the manager or leader will have to think through. You have to think through his perceived goals and its corresponding results. You have to ponder with, you have to pray about it, you have to think what your goal in regards to your ministry. And then you putting logic as you think through, putting logic in it and not guessing. No, it's not guessing, but you have put logic. And in connection with this, the leader, the manager, uses his skills in making decisions to achieve prescribed goals. So he uses logic and methods to think through goals and action. So planning for church direction for a pastor and projects is very important because church people would want to know where the church is going and what development projects, if there is any project that the church will be involved, are they going to undertake it to serve the parishioners or members of the church, the congregations, and the community as well. You cannot be an inside looking church, you have to be outward looking church also. You have to reach the community. You have to be identified as a Christian church. And how can you connect the community if you will not go out and reach out the community? And so, when the ministry grows, the more planning is a must for the minister. The more planning is a must for the leader. Agree?
Agree.
Yeah. When it grows, the more you have to plan well, the more that planning should be involved in a regular basis to check whether you are in the right track. When he does this, limited resources of the church can be utilized to its best use because we have limited resources. But when well planned, all the limited resources will be used to the maximum. And considering the heaviness of his workloads, now I am talking about pastors, His actions and directions will be consistent to the purpose and missions of the church and not, take note of this, deviate from it. In other words, he will be more focused on what the church is doing in line with the goals as being planned. An example of this is how he is going to balance his time with administrative work and personal preparations for Bible studies and sermon for Sunday services, coupled with supervising the different ministries of the church, which volunteers meets regularly during weekdays. And I think that you are familiar with this, no? Experiencing lots of ministry. You are already uh, being pressured
On the job.
how, yeah, on the job, how to balance on this. And aside from this, he can focus also on improving the quality during weekdays. The quality, no, especially focusing on improving the qualities of his ministry, giving him ample time to evaluate and adjust so that the implementation of church ministry is done properly. And then in the process, he can arrive at sound decision, clear decision, whatever problem arises. You will not be shocked if there's some problem because you know how to handle them. But if the pastor fails to plan, take note of this. The job will not be finished because financial resources are lacking and people are untapped for involvement. In other words, there's no commitment, no cooperation because the pastor, the leader, fails to plan. So that's number one, no? About planning. That's the summary of our lesson about planning. The second is organizing. I use the Nehemiah principle in order to understand biblically how Nehemiah mobilized the people, how he organized, and in our present setting, how he was able to come up with an organizational chart. Now, Sooner and Freeman defines this process of engaging two or more people in working together in a structural way to achieve a specific goal or set of goals. Now, organizing is the leader's skills. No, it's a skill that you need to develop in grouping people under the supervision of a person, under the authority over them, and placing them into a structure so that they can perform effectively to achieve their goals. So you have to assign people, trusted people, to oversee them. In applying this function, the leader will be able to establish lines of authority wherein is the heads knows the people under them and knows to whom they are accountable. For example, in a church setting, the major ministries of the local church, such as administration, finance, mission and worship, teaching, and fellowship, need, no? need chairpersons who are qualified in this position. But sad to say, there are places or head of ministries in our churches headed by unqualified people, right? They're unqualified because popular vote lang siguro. No? So it is the responsibility of the leader, responsibility of a pastor in a church to establish clear lines of authority so that there will be order within the church. Absence of authority will lead to confusion where everyone is overlapping their responsibility. Since church activities are many, organizing improves the efficiency and quality of work through cooperation or working together. So it will improve the efficiency, the ministry of the church. There's also a clear division of labor, no overlapping, to reduce burnout feelings if church social services are organized, and the right person is fitted in the right place.
Are your parents home? Are you with
Consideration
your
should be taken seriously by the leader since almost of these staffs consider this one are volunteers. They're all volunteers. So they have their own jobs and are most family persons. Unlike, no, unlike in a, a private settings, a private corporation that you are paid, so you have to perform, no? You have to exercise, no? You have your responsibility is assigned to you because you are a paid worker. But in a church setting, it's it's different. Under you are volunteers, volunteers. So this is the importance of organizing. You have to organize well, put qualified people in a chairmanship or any board in order for them to perform well, and then heading some people under them to guide them in order to perform the respective task or responsibility under their committee. And that's important of organizing. The third is leading. It's lots of articles about leading, about leadership, and we're overwhelmed. No? If you go to national bookstores, there are lots of publication about leadership. Leading is defined by Stoner and Freeman as the process of directing and influencing the task, related activities of group members or an entire organization. And this process applies to pastors, church settings, who manage, direct, influence, and motivate workers to perform essential tasks. So these ministry skills about leading is causing people to take effective action. If you know how to develop your skills of leadership, people will be influenced by you. That's why John Maxwell defined leadership as influence. If you cannot influence people, you are not a leader. And so it causes people to do effective action. Although in a church setting, they're volunteers, but when you say something, when you request something, people will rally behind you. And this is very crucial for the minister or any leader to develop this skill because in an environment when people are asked to volunteer, he would be able to get their support and rally behind him. And so he's engaged. No? He's engaged to inspire and where necessary require people to take actions. You know, two things that I would like to remind you about leadership, and you need to master this one. Leadership involves number one, decision making. You have to be decisive, no? In any things that you have to make a decision. It calls for a decision. You have to be decisive. Second is communication. These are very important things. You know, friends, students, good leadership depends to a large degree on making right decisions. How many of you ha- are frustrated about your leaders who made bad decisions? And I'm sure if you are in the academy, if you are in in a teaching ministry, your principals made some decisions which you think that's not a wise decision, and you'll be frustrated and you cannot complain. Okay, every leader is constantly faced with the need to make decisions, and his ultimate effectiveness depends to a great extent on getting a high percentage of them right. You have to be sure, you have to weigh all the facts, you have a strong support that this will be the right decision that I'm going to make. Picture a church when the pastor is undecisive. They don't know what to do. When you ask the pastor, Pastor, what's our direction for this year? You're gonna pastor. Okay, let's just pray about it. Let's wait for the Lord because the Lord will make a way. No? So you have to make decisions. Planning is involved, organizing involved, and then you make decisions. This will be the direction. Okay, this will be the theme for this year. And so this will be the theme for January, March, April. If you're going to make a preaching calendar, you have to decide based on the needs of the people. Don't disregard, okay, your listening congregation about their needs. In communication, that's number one, that's decision making. In communication, every leader, that includes the minister, should concentrate on developing every possible dimension of human communication skills. And the foremost of this is vocal communication. That's why we need to be practicing vocal communication to talk what's really in our heart, in our mind. We can express it rightly. We can choose words that are understandable, words that people can understand, our leaders, no, our subordinates can understand, and they can follow it literally. So the foremost of this is vocal communication, which is the ability to communicate information through spoken word clearly, concisely, and engaging and interesting manner. It's not in a boring manner, but you need to engage it with interesting manner, with convincing attitude. And this would be a great help for leaders as he engages himself to different sectors in his community, as he introduces livelihood projects, for example, and other community-related endeavors. So he has to communicate. He needs to connect with people in the community, who lead the leaders in the community. A further skill, I think, that might be developed, in communication is writing. I know that it's hard to write, it's hard to compose, but I believe this would be an excellent means of keeping people informed in the locality of the many aspects and developments of a Byron program, and especially writing proposals addressed to LGUs, local government units, or when you connect with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, or other financial institutions or individual supporters to support the proposed projects for the community. When you are working in a non-governmental organization, you need to write, you need to inform. That's why newsletter is very important. And I think silang gabo, no, nasa newsletter,
Every month,
it connect,
monthly,
uh,
monthly.
it it's very good, no? It's good. It's an advantage to write because people who knows you, who send letters, they can pray for you. They're your prayer backups. And then if they see the needs, no, if they have the resources, they will send you financial help. That's the advantage. That's why communication is very important in the ministry. Don't be a lone ranger. Okay? So inside the church, communication is important. That's why we have news. You have some uh, after the service information through slides, and then you have some information through your bulletins, uh, uh, prayer requests, other information for you to communicate. So see to it that the leadership in your church communicates to the people, not only to preaching, but also to person to person communication, especially the pastor. That he can also communicate to his leaders kung sa iyang mind. Na makalitan na sila nga uwa mamingon si pastor niini. But they have they should they should communicate. Okay. And then the fourth is controlling, and I'll be discussing this more lengthily next meeting. But I just give you some overview about controlling. Now, controlling is the process of ensuring, okay, ensuring, take note of the word ensuring, is the process of ensuring that actual activities conform to planned activities. In other words, what's being planned will be implemented. Walay usab-usaban. So nagsabot na ta mao ni. Nya dahil usbod di ay kalito na usog. So something is wrong. Here, the leader, as manager, makes sure that the church is moving towards organizational objectives. Controlling is a very important skill for the pastor as he endeavors projects because as he plans, organizes, and then lead, controlling is oftentimes neglected. Probably he does not know how to do it, and as the project is into motion, okay, any project in the church into motion, be evangelistic, whatever, the minister should act to assure that all performance conforms to plan. There should be check and balance in order to harness and sustain the initial momentum of a new plan and making timely and appropriate adjustments. And so the manager or leader can establish SOP. Are you familiar with that? Standard of
Operating.
performance.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Measure results and make corrections. And this is very important so that the minister will be able to monitor and progress, for example, of a feeding program. And after that, for example, for a feeding program, and after that, evaluate the procedures, manpower, and food given to the clients, and then make some corrective measures to improve the next feeding. So these are the four, okay, levels of leadership, levels of foundations of management. So you can stop the recording that, then we can
Alright.
come up with
Uh,